Hey everybody, Josh Collacchi here with today's starting pitching picks on Roto Curve. Last night was a great night for pitchers. We saw guys like Mark Burley, who was a good value play here. Chris Sale pitched well. Although he didn't strike out a lot of batters, he still was able to get the win in a complete game. We saw guys like Carlos Carrasco got shelled a little bit, but his counterpart Dallas Keuchel was probably the top value pitcher on the night. And also AJ Burnett pitched very well, especially he was very low owned because a lot of people thought that game was, excuse me, going to be rained out. So if you had him in your GPPs last night, you probably did pretty well. But without further ado, let's get into today's slate. It's a big one. Max Scherzer pitches today. I want to talk about him because normally at his price, I believe he's over $14,000 on DraftKings, at $11,000 on FanDuel. He's not a target usually. But today I'm going to play him simply because of the Dodgers bats and their prices. I'm sure Rath touched on this earlier, and Benich, I'm sure, touched on it in his value pieces. But the one thing I wanted to talk about is their algorithm for prices on FanDuel and DraftKings has those Dodgers bats just a little bit too lower a price, because I think what they thought was going to happen was Cole Hamels maybe was originally supposed to pitch on this day. So what happened was in their algorithm, they had those Dodgers bats priced for Hamels. Now, Chad Billingsley's pitching, and he's not even close to Hamels. He's allowed a ton of hits and a ton of home runs to left-handed bats this year. So those Dodger bats are a great value, and that's the reason why I think we can afford Scherzer today. Obviously, I like him, and everybody likes him. He's the top pitcher in baseball at the moment. But I'm not going to talk about him. I'm going to talk about some other guys. Another guy I like, and I'm going to be using him with Scherzer, and I think we can afford him because of those Dodgers bats, is Kluber against the top strikeout team in the Astros in baseball. But once again, those are the two top guys that everybody's going to be on. So let's talk about three options that may be a little bit lesser owned, but they could have a little bit of a cap benefiting part to your team. The first guy is Manny Benuelos. He's the left-handed pitcher for the Braves against Milwaukee Brewers. He just $5,900 on DraftKings and $5,400 on FanDuel, which is huge because you can get Benuelos at that price on FanDuel, and you look at some of those Dodgers bats who are also cheap. You can spend pretty much anything you want on other bats, whether that be Jose Bautista or guys like Josh Donaldson or Edwin Encarnacion. But the reason why I like Benuelos today is because he faces the Brewers, who, although they seem like they're built to hit left-handed pitching, they really haven't this year. They're batting just .212, which is the lowest batting average in baseball. Benuelos is a top pitching prospect for the Yankees for quite some time, and he showed why in his last start with 5 2/3 and 7 strikeouts of just 2-hit shutout ball. Now, what Benuelos does well is he's not a big overpowering guy. He pitches in a fastball in the low 90s. He has a good curveball, a good changeup. But that curveball and changeup are 15 to 20 mile an hour slower than his fastball. That's a huge deal because that means he can change speeds and he can use any of those pitches at any time because of the speed difference. If you're used to seeing a fastball at 90, then you see a curveball come in over the top at 71, 72, that fastball is going to seem a lot faster at 90 miles an hour next time you see it. And that's one reason why he's been so successful in his minor league career and his major league career so far in one start. The other guy I wanted to talk about is somebody I mentioned yesterday, is Edison Volquez against the Tampa Bay Rays. Now, of course, that game was rained out last night, but Volquez is starting again. I do like him. We don't have to go over those reasons again. If you would decide to look at yesterday's video, you can see why. But essentially, it was the matchup against the Tampa Bay Rays and how they don't perform well against right-handed batters or right-handed pitching. The other two guys I like today may come as a bit of a shock to some people, but I actually like both pitchers from Coors Field. Now, that sounds crazy, and don't shoot the messenger here, but Chad Bettis has been very successful at home this year, which seems like a bit of an anomaly because pitchers in Coors Field seem to struggle as a whole. But Bettis has been good. He has a 2.84 ERA and a whip of just over 1.2 at Coors Field this year. And he's been better at home than on the road, which tells me that he can pitch in Coors Field. The way that he pitches allows him to record some outs there, and that's a big thing, because not many pitchers will ever be selected in daily fantasy baseball in Coors Field, which means that Bettis will be very low owned. He faces the Angels, who have struggled as an offense other than Mike Trout and Albert Pujols this year. But you have to remember, the Angels are losing the DH today, and that's a big thing because an American League team losing the DH, it's not just one hitter. It throws that lineup off because when you watch National League Baseball, the 8-hitter doesn't see very many fastballs as well with the pitcher hitting behind them. So it goes from a 9-man lineup to a 7-man lineup, and a team that's already struggling as it is, the Angels make for a great matchup for Chad Bettis. Now, it is Coors Field, so I would only suggest using it in tournaments if you have the ability to afford Scherzer and Kluber with the cheap Dodgers bat today, but I do like him. Now, on the other side is a guy by the name of Andrew Heaney, who's a left-handed pitcher for the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, California, whatever their name is. But the part of the reason why I like him is because the Rockies have struggled against left-handed pitching this year. They're striking out about 25% of the time, which I believe is the highest in baseball. And they're hitting about 30 points lower against left-handed pitching, and they're slugging about 100 points lower left-handed pitching as opposed to right-handed pitching. Now, they are at home. They are in Coors Field, and obviously that's a big difference. The Rockies score a lot of runs there, but they've struggled against lefties, and that's one reason why I like Haney. That being said, when you think about Coors Field and the pitching and the thin air, what that thin air does is it limits the breaking pitches. So guys that throw good slider, good breaking balls aren't going to get enough movement that they need to use. Now, that's why I think I like Haney today, because he doesn't necessarily need to use a slider. He's a fastball changeup pitcher, changes speeds, works in and out, up and down, and that gives him the ability to get hitters out in different ways. Now, if you don't have a great breaking pitch in Coors Field, it doesn't matter because not a lot of guys will be using that. The pitchers that have just been successful over the years there have they work down in the zone, and they can use their fastball and changeup and change the speed to their advantage, and that's something that Haney can do. Both of those guys, Bettis and Haney, will be very low owned today. So throw them in a few cheap GPPs, and if they can put up 20 or more fantasy points on DraftKings or 12 or more fantasy points on FanDuel, you're looking at a cheap point per dollar value, which is huge in those tournaments, and they will be very low owned pitching in Coors Field. That has been today's pitching segment. Please stay tuned for tomorrow's edition.